It's a good tuna, but I think I paid too much.
I always wear my mask and wash my hands after going home.
I am the king of the ring.
Welcome to the Japan What Podcast, episode 204. And I'm your host, Matthew P.M. Bigelow.com. And I'm coming at you from the Aizumicho Studios in Shinjuku, Tokyo, Japan. The arm of Asia. Covering AI markets, Japan Society 5.0, the supply chain wars, migration, depopulation, and rising conflict in the Indo-Pacific. We thank you for coming along the adventure. That is today's show. Busy day as usual. Last week I was talking about the Ides of March in relation to Shakespeare, an iambic pentameter. It's not a Shakespeare podcast. And I was saying that March sucks. I also said it was part of Macbeth, but it's not. It's Julius Caesar, marking the day when he died. Was assassinated by a bunch of real jerks. Real bunch of jerks killed Caesar. I'll go on the line and say that. But I said that March is the worst month for weather. And it is. Yesterday, it was beautiful. It was 12 degrees, warm. You wore a coat. Your coat got hot. Felt like taking it off. But then I wake up this morning, and there's thunder and lightning at like 6:30 in the morning. And then it starts snowing. And then it starts sleeting, and then it starts snowing again. Now it's like 2 degrees. And that is alone is proof as to why March is the worst month of the year and why we have the age-old thingity-boo by Mr. Bill Shakespeare. The Ides of March doesn't apply to Shakespeare. It applies to all of us. And the assassins is the weather, and we're all Caesar. And every year, our spring is assassinated by the terrible weather, and everybody pretends like it doesn't happen. They just go, no, the cherry blossoms. But those of us who know, wink, wink. And that's the Japan What podcast way of thinking. We don't think in... We don't agree with the psyopery that goes on all around us. We look at it and go, nay, I decline thine psyop in iambic pentameter. We need to do more iambic pentameter. No, we don't. Actually, I use iambic pentameter for metering and other things, but actually I don't really feel a kindred spirit with those who pursue iambic pentameter as a way of life. Do you? Today we're going to take a look at two main things for today. Supply chain wars and Japan Society 5.0. A lot is going on with the supply chain wars, so we're going to begin with that for today. Let's begin. Die for the war, everybody moves. Die for the good, die for the war, die for the war. So for the past few years, focusing on the supply chain wars, it's mainly been in favor of BRICS nations, China producing most of the ships and producing more and more of most of the ships year on year. And China's shipbuilding capacity is dual use, meaning it could be for civilians, it could be commercial, it could be military. The People's Liberation Army Navy, the plan, can use those ships too, allegedly. Chinese fishing fleets can be retrofitted with deep hulls or reinforced hulls for quasi-military style endeavors, all this type of thing. And I've been following the supply chain wars ever since COVID shut down, or the Chinese government shut down Wuhan as a result of COVID. And that made me realize that Wuhan was a bottleneck in the supply chain, and you could just shut it down, and it caused chaos in G7 style supply chains for years. I spent more time during the COVID insanity worried about the supply chains than I ever worried about the virus. I was like, come on, let's get these things back up and running. We need them. There's a rival out there gobbling up market share as we speak. And that was, of course, China, and partnered up with Russia for its energy now, has even more energy to fuel its global ambitions of becoming the world's global hegemon of supply chain dominance. Why not? It makes everything. Why not be the supply chain of the world? And of course, there's the satellites and the AI that can power a lot of the ships now and can connect buyers and sellers around the world. And they could use the Chinese apps to conduct market activities, and the government can secure government contracts with places around the world. Cocoa from Ghana, for example, just as one example. It all works together. And by putting it under the RMB in a digital payment process, it creates a Chinese-based payment system with the surveillance, with the government control poured over like gravy all over the top of it. And that's been going on for a while now, and there's been little pushback from the G7. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt. There's been a lot of people in Asia, like myself, or China Uncensored, or China Unscripted, or Serpent, he's like the Serpent South Africa. He's a China hawk, although they don't live in China anymore. So unfortunately, their intel is, I think, largely compromised by intelligence agencies, which we'll be using today. CSIS. I think they're an intelligence agency disguised as a think tank. I make no qualms about these statements. I don't need friends. But in the past, ever since the United States changed its administrations from Biden to Trump, because Biden didn't really do anything. I think he was largely compromised by China's influence, and China has massive influence in American politics, and we don't really know how far it goes. Controversial topic, not to go too much into U.S. poli, but everybody knows about like the Jewish influence, or I wouldn't say Jewish, the Israeli influence in American politics. There's a lot of American politicians that hold dual passports for Israel and America, and we don't need to get too conspiratorial about it. But if you have just say, let's not put this in American context directly, but let's say you have a branch of government that has 400 people in it, and they're all elected representatives, and 85 people in that group hold dual nationalities with like your country and the other country. You might go, there might be some sort of interest there, and it's logical to say so. Whether it's good or bad, it's up to you to decide. I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying that it's obvious. But we don't really know the obviousness of Chinese influence because it's mostly done through economic partnerships or Confucius Institutes or friendship alliances and things like that. So we don't really know, but it seemed that there was some pretty tight relationships between the Biden administration and China that may have prevented them from holding their own national interests above that, perhaps. Just a speculation. But now, with the new administration, they are shifting quite rapidly away from Europe and towards Asia, specifically regarding the supply chain wars. If you look at it in terms of supply chain, it makes a lot more sense. Ukraine, Russia, supply chain, that would be production of grains and also oil or natural gases, hydrocarbons with pipelines, Syria, Israel as well, and China in the South China Sea versus everybody else, it seems, where Taiwan, I would say, let's just say Taiwan, China, where in each of these conflicts, the BRICS are on one side and the G7 is on the other side, pretty clearly and pretty directly. And as we're going to see from today, Japan is wrapped into this, but it's also kind of being pushed and pulled between these two forces. It's geographically up against China. I mean, not up against as in confrontational. It is that, but what I meant was situated, right. They share a maritime border, China and Japan right next to each other. But the Japanese archipelago is dotted with American military bases and alliances with Europe and all that. So ideologically, it's more of a G7 style position, but economically, pretty tight with the old Asian sphere there. Makes sense, right? Why wouldn't it be? Other countries too, but especially one thing that is beginning to become focused on that isn't so obfuscated, like how can you tally the amount of influence one Confucius Institute has at one university versus another? It's a bunch of question marks. You kind of go, maybe some, maybe more, but I don't really know. But one thing that is that can be numerated, that can be put into numbers and then comparisons and then make an action plan based on that in the context of shipping is shipbuilding. Now, you may know, but you may not know. I think most people know that China is one of the world's major shipbuilders. In fact, it is the major shipbuilder of the world and has been for quite some time. It used to be pretty evenly distributed between South Korea, Japan, and China. South Korea and Japan still have major market segments occupied in like the large shipbuilding industry. But China year on year has been eating up more of that commercially and then recently more so militarily. It's dual use. Everybody should be dual use. I used to hear China's dual use technology be like, oh, those sneaky dudes. Or when Russia invaded Ukraine, like they're using Russian dishwasher chips to create their military equipment. And I was like, oh, those sneaky Russians and dishwasher chips. Guess they're stupid. But actually, it just makes sense. You can transfer over to a military economy using the same technology, and you don't have to set up an entire different supply chain network to do so, going back to supply chain. So maybe more things should be dual use. Makes sense to me. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to take a look first at the deep state influence on the podcastosphere, including mine. This comes to us from CSIS, not the Canadian CIA or whatever it is, but this is the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a think tank that likes to posit itself as a think tank, but I think is more connected to American influence building that the intel community can use as a legitimate source to further aims. And whether you think that's good or bad, that's up to you. I have a take. Big deal. Ship war. So this comes to us. This was published when? March 11th, 2025. And we're recording this on March 19th, 2025. And the title here is Ship Wars, Confronting China's Dual-Use Shipbuilding Empire. Now, I was thinking of supply chain wars, and I just read ship wars, and I've read this a few times now, but supply chain, supply ships, ship wars. So it's interesting how this is coming to fruition. I always kind of felt I was pursuing this fringe idea over the past few years, but in the past few weeks, it's really bubbled up to the top. I'm going to read some of this document here and then play some audio and then wrap it up and then lead into something else. So there is a plan. Let's begin. China has rapidly established itself as the world's dominant shipbuilding power, marginalizing the United States and its allies in a strategically important industry. In addition to building massive numbers of commercial ships, many Chinese shipyards also produce warships for the country's rapidly growing navy. As part of its military-civil fusion strategy, China is tapping into the dual-use resources of its commercial shipbuilding empire to support its ongoing naval modernization. Foreign companies are inadvertently helping to propel China's naval buildup by buying Chinese-made ships and sharing dual-use technologies with Chinese shipyards. U.S. policymakers need to act quickly. And it goes on from there. So that's just like, there's a little bit of an audio and then there's another sample. So let's just see if I can get this audio queued up. All right. So we're going to play it from here.
Ships are bigger than other ships. So you really want to think about tonnage here, right? How many tons of ships are you producing at any given point at any given year? So tonnage is the measure. And if you look at the numbers, just one Chinese company last year, China's biggest shipbuilding company, it produced more vessels by tonnage than the entire U.S. shipbuilding industry has since the end of World War II, right? So I'm going to say that again. One Chinese company last year made more ships, basically, than the U.S. has since the end of World War II, all of those years combined. And so that's a big challenge, right? The U.S. is not, competing with China in this space. China's dominating in it. But we're at a point now where we can start thinking about what are the opportunities for us to build back some functional shipbuilding in the United States. We're not going to compete with China across the board, but there are some areas where we can start making investments and where we can put some, punitive measures in place, especially if we can work with some other countries around the world to try and target China in this area. There are some policies and some actions that are worth noting here. For example, the SHIPS Act, which was introduced to Congress last year.
All right, we'll stop it there. A couple of things that he's mentioning there is They're not going to outcompete China on this. The third in command at the Pentagon right now, Elbridge Colby, who we follow each other on X, has helped me with some AI research in the podcast in the past. And I've followed him for quite a while now, and he's pretty consistent with what he says, which is nice. And he seems to be competent, which is nice. But he is the third up at the Pentagon, so there's that. He's repeatedly said they don't want to pursue regime change in the Asia Pacific, meaning they're not going to try to topple China. There's this idea of America shifting away from the world's protector. But one thing I think they want to keep to themselves or keep in the long term is the supply chain routes, because those are so profitable and they take so much time to build. So that's one thing that he can say there. But it was interesting that he said in the past year, one ship company built more ships than the U.S. has since the end of World War II. That's just one ship. So it's not exactly one person eking ahead of you in a race. It's one person is shooting off into the moon and you've been chasing your own tail, calling it racist with a bunch of octogenarians running things for the past 4 or 5 years. So people don't often think about you in your own competitive sphere. You think we're going to pursue this angle on society for the next 4 or 5 years. But if another country, like a competitive country, like a rival, pursues a different angle and a way more successful angle, after 5 or 6 years, that's a lot of time for something to come to fruition. Then you're delayed 5 or 6 years. Now you got to play catch up. So that other rival has established everything and it's running smoothly and they're progressing further. And now you have to take all this time to shift over to something else, find a way to do it, and then put in these measures and methodologies that enable it to happen with a lot of hiccups along the way as you position yourself as the person you were before, but really you're not. By the way, the person speaking there was Matthew P. Furaniole from CSIS, and I'll be linking that at MatthewPMBigelow.com. So the idea that they're going to pursue something else, pursue regime change and topple Xi doesn't seem to be the thing, but the idea of keeping the supply chains within their own control is definitely something that they're pursuing. Now, the speaker there, Mr. Matthew, who shares the same name as me, MatthewPMBigelow.com, mentioned a few things that the U.S. wants to pursue, and these are the recommendations taken from the two-pager from this think tank, CSIS. It says, we recommend 8 specific policy actions to address these challenges. Impose targeted docking fees on Chinese-owned ships and vessels made at key PRC shipyards. That's People's Republic of China. What that would do, last week I covered it, it would put a $1.5 million docking fee. And I think what that is aiming to do is aiming to destroy companies like Shein or Temu. These are these very cheap Chinese retailers that I see advertised on Amazon, like men's shirts and jackets for like 350 yen. So the PRC right now is trying to undercut Western retail and manufacturing by just making everything below ridiculously cheap. And I don't really care much about companies like H&M that, use Chinese labor to create shirts at 10 times the price for no reason. So I'm just saying that in terms of preventing what your money going to another rival's shores, putting a fee on the docking makes sense. Restrict the transportation of certain U.S. critical goods on Chinese ships and create a list of trusted vessels. List of trusted vessels means a trusted supply chain network, right? Supply chain wars. Sever U.S. financial and business ties with Chinese shipyards that directly support China's naval modernization. Don't know how you do that. Should just be a blanket thing. But that would, again, it's about preventing U.S. capital, maybe even G7 capital, from fleeing or being extracted from G7 and put into China. And I'm going to explain what China's able to do with this money in just a second here. It says you use targeted diplomacy to encourage like-minded countries to implement similar measures. That would be Japan specifically. Invest in long-term shipbuilding capacity in the U.S. Attract foreign investments. So that's bringing money back into. So it's a financialization. They're not really talking about becoming the next builder, but they're talking about using financialization as a way to prevent capital flight from the G7 and going into China. And then with the money that you would retain, you'd be able to allocate that perhaps into shipbuilding or perhaps into something more constructive. So it seems to be more preventative and punitive rather than constructive, if that makes sense. So what has China been able to do with all of these investments? So amid all of this investment, tech development, and ship production, China is now mapping the seabed to further its maritime ambitions. So I've seen some of these ships that China's been putting out, these research vessels. Usually when I think of research vessels, I just think of typically like something from like the 1990s, early 2000s, like a giant ship with a bunch of arms and ropes and pulleys on it. And it has like a submersible on the side, and it goes down and it comes back up with some camera data, and the scientists clap and something like that. But these new research vessels have all of like these crazy radars and balls and bulbs on them. They look like future churches on the ocean. And this is, of course, packed with surveillance equipment that you can use deep penetrating something for blah, blah, blah. So these are not your grandfather's research vessels. These are churches, future churches on the ocean, and God is at the bottom, and they're trying to communicate with God down there. But these are communists that don't believe in that. China's efforts to map the seabed have garnered significant attention due to their potential military and strategic implications. The country has been rapidly expanding its ocean exploration, deploying a fleet of advanced research vessels to survey vast stretches of the ocean floor, far beyond its shores. This initiative is driven by a combination of scientific, commercial, and military objectives, with a particular focus on gaining an edge in naval warfare. The seabed mapping involves detailed scanning of underwater terrain, collecting data on currents, temperature, salinity, and the composition of the ocean floor. This information has multiple applications. Militarily, it can enhance China's capabilities in submarine operations, improve sonar accuracy, and aid in the detection or placement of naval mines. For example, understanding the seabed's topography and environmental conditions can help submarines navigate stealthily or identify strategic locations for undersea infrastructure. Additionally, the data could support anti-access area denial strategies, which aim to restrict adversaries' movements in contested waters, such as the South China Sea or the Indian Ocean. So Japan is putting together quite the fleet or the flotilla of submarines. It's been Christianing them recently in these events. And this could be China's way of countering Japan's encroachment or Japan's surveillance abilities with its submarine flotillas around the Senkaku Islands or around Taiwan in case some sort of contingency happens. So with all of this funding, all of this money going back into China, it's able to create these advanced research vessels. And like I said, it's not just like some dinky little ship with a submersible on the side that plooshes into the ocean and comes back with some sort of video camera captured footage of some sort of squid that they thought had gone extinct 50 years ago. This is advanced mapping for military purposes for their own advancement and to prevent other countries from going ahead with it as well. Who knows if they even had some of this equipment on their recent adventures into the Tasman Sea, encircling Australia down there, and all of that. So by restricting the amount of capital flight leaving the G7 and going into China, the idea would be that it would limit China's ability to create more and more of these types of advanced ships. It could work. You know, people like to finances, follow the money is what they always say. It could work, but it could also be just the first step in an actual plan rather than before, which was just to throw up our hands and go, gee, I don't know. We don't want to upset them because they will become upset. And if we do or say anything, it'll upset them. And we don't want that. So we're not going to do anything. We're just going to let them go ahead and do it. because we're all intensely compromised by their subversive diplomatic endeavors that, open up into our systems so easily because we're incredibly naive and don't understand how the world works. So that's the supply chain here. Just to kind of elaborate a little bit on Japan one. A couple of headlines before moving into the other segment for these supply chain wars. Japan eyes deploying long-range missiles in Kyushu. That's Japan's southern main island there, not Okinawa above that. But Japan is considering deploying long-range missiles in Kyushu as the part of the country's efforts to acquire counter-strike capabilities. Expected to commence at the end of next fiscal year. And it's important for its proximity to Taiwan amid growing fears the self-ruled democratic island may be invaded by China. This is good, so I hope we get more missiles put up down there. And in case anybody from the SDF or the self-defense forces, the Jieitai, is listening, Japan needs to start drone production. We need to start drone production and placing swarms of drones on these islands as well. And optical laser arrays that can flash and disrupt encroaching vessels from other nations and give them a very positive and happy light show for arriving unannounced in rabid displays of power that Japan is doing. So it's not like they're not doing anything. It's little logical steps next to giant leaps and bounds. Japan commissions 4th Awaji-class minesweeper. Coming to us from navalnews.com. I'm using a lot of naval news recently. The Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force commissioned its 4th Awaji-class mine countermeasures vessel in a ceremony held on March 12th in Yokohama City. Named Nomi, the 67-meter longboat was inducted into the service's Minesweeper Division 3 at the Kure Naval Base in Hiroshima Prefecture shortly after being handed over by shipbuilder Japan Maritime United Corporation. The ship's name comes from the Higashinomi and Hinishinomi Islands located in Hiroshima Bay, and this is the second Japanese vessel to bear this name. I'm not going to go too much. It's a World War II reference. According to the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Forces, the Awaji class has a crew complement of around 50, a standard displacement of 690 tons, a beam of 11 meters, and each of the vessels in service is powered by 2 diesel engines. The hull is fiber reinforced plastic material. What does it say what it can do? I guess it just is equipped with light detection and ranging, LiDAR, surveillance systems, which can locate objects underwater at long range, both during the day and at night. And the ship is equipped with the Mitsui E&S Holdings expendable mine disposal system for mine identification, as well with the Hitachi-made variable depth sonar system, which is designed to detect, locate, and classify mines. It is also equipped with the Remis 600 autonomous underwater vehicle, known as OZ4, and made by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution to locate and clear deep mines. It has a remote control weapons system. All right, well, keep it there. So it's not as if Japan is just sitting on its hands and preparing it for one of those stranger events. They are building and preparing and doing some necessary preparatory work to maintain its hold as a G7 member in the supply chain war, but also to prevent more reckless incursions by an aggressive neighbor that seeks to expand and dominate weaker and weaker rivals. The second one here, and this one affects Japan a little bit less geographically speaking, but can hopefully affect our commerce a little bit better. And this has to do with the United States striking Yemen with a bunch of missiles. The Houthis there don't have a navy, but they've been able to implement a naval blockade for the better part of a year and a half, it seems, by launching missiles at ships that are Israeli or Israeli friendly and preventing access to the Sinai Peninsula or going through the Suez Canal. And this has, of course, made shipping take longer to go around Africa, more expensive. It affects insurance rates. And it also makes it seem that BRICS nations have a more reliable, secure, faster supply chain route because their ships get to go through the Houthi naval blockade and they then have an advantage. The idea here is that the Houthis are allied with the Palestinians, and the Palestinians are allied with Iran, and Iran is allied with China and Russia. So you see how this divides itself on those lines I was mentioning earlier. But during the Biden administration, nothing really happened. A bunch of these, I was expecting you're just firing missiles at the U.S. Navy and they're not doing anything. They're just running away. What's with this weird non-confrontational attitude to something that's so precious to the U.S. economy, which is domination of the supply chain routes of the world? So I'm not surprised. I don't really support the Houthis, but I don't want to see them, bombed into oblivion either. But you pick your battles. And they definitely pick their battles. They're like, hey, our brothers are the Palestinians. They're being genocided, which is true. So we're going to put up a fight against you. Now, we'll see what happens as a result of that. The fall of Syria might be connected to the U.S. willing to strike Yemen as strongly as it has, because the fall of Syria has resulted in Israel being able to take certain paths or certain areas of Syria that Iran had been using to deliver goods or whatever it was delivering. A lot of people suspect military aid, humanitarian aid, whatever you want to say, through Syria and then through the ports there. Ports or it was part of a resource access network, but it's been cut off now and it's been disrupted. And then when you have a disruption, you have a weakening, and when you have a weakening, you strike. So this comes to us from Marco Rubio, and I don't watch American news at all. I really hate American broadcast. I hate the way they talk, and I don't like the way they used to talk better, but the past 10 years, they've all turned into these nasally twits who just freak out all the time. I hate it. But Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State from the United States, is talking about the reasons why they are attacking the Yemenis, the Houthis, and it goes right into shipping very quickly.
I'm wondering, how long will this campaign last, and will it involve ground forces?
Well, first of all, the problem here is that this is a very important shipping lane, and in the last year and a half, the last 18 months, the Houthis have struck or attacked 174 naval vessels of the United States, attacking the U.S. Navy directly 174 times, and 145 times they've attacked commercial shipping. So we basically have a band of pirates, with guided precision anti-ship weaponry, and exacting a toll system in one of the most important shipping lanes in the world. That's just not sustainable. We are not going to have these people controlling which ships can go through and which ones cannot. And so your question is, how long will this go on? It will go on until they no longer have the capability to do that.
Well, what does U.S. intelligence tell us at this point? Because the U.S. had been conducting strikes for some time, but has not stopped the Houthis. So What's going to be different right now? Do you have more fidelity in the intelligence that would make this more successful?
Well, those strikes were retaliation strikes. So they launched one missile, we hit the missile launcher, or we sent something to do it. This is not a message. This is not a one-off. This is an effort to deny them the ability to continue to constrict and control shipping. And it's just not going to happen. We're not going to have these guys, these people with weapons able to tell us where our ships can go, where the ships of all the world can go, by the way. It's not just the U.S. We're doing the world a favor. Yeah. We're doing the entire world a favor by getting rid of these guys and their ability to strike global shipping. That's the mission here, and it will continue until that's carried out. That never happened before. The Biden administration didn't do that. All the Biden administration would do is they would respond to an attack. These guys would launch one rocket, we'd hit the rocket launcher. That's it. This is an effort to take away their ability to control global shipping in that part of the world. That's just not going to happen anymore.
And it could
this will continue until that's finished.
All right. Now, I don't want to listen. If you look at this female interviewer, looks like just someone you would never want to sit beside. Oof. Just the vibes. Evil, globalist, lizard people vibes. Like she's, instead of like those dresses where you zip off at the back, down at the bum, that's just her skin. You zip that down and out crawls a slimy lizard person. I can't stand them. But you can see that the shift there in the policy that's the top of the United States there, going from attack to attack shipping. So the policy has completely changed. The idea now is that it's affecting shipping. So they're putting it under a shipping umbrella. And with the CSIS as well, putting it under a shipping umbrella to counter China's shipping ambitions, which are then dual use and all of that. So what we can see here is major shifts in the supply chain war. It's military on one side by bombing a group of people that were interfering with your shipping lanes. And then on the other side of the world where the Taiwan-China issue is happening, there's a financialization where if like-minded countries are going to accept Chinese goods and Chinese ships and not implement a penalty on those, probably what the United States would do at this point would be to implement a penalty on those countries who refuse to implement a penalty on the Chinese. So making people really take a side and ideologically and economically, whereas before Japan was ideologically aligned with the States but economically aligned with its neighbors. Maybe now it will be forced to take more of an economic alignment if they want to keep the ideological alignment in place. That's going to be it for the supply chain war. Die for the war. Everybody moves. Die for the good, Die for the war. Die for the war. Oh, what I forgot to say is I wanted to wrap it back towards Japan there. It just takes a minute. If the supply chain routes via the Red Sea, where the Houthis are located, can be reestablished and cut down shipping time and therefore shipping costs and go through the canal, the Suez Canal, as opposed to the Horn of Africa or whatever, not the Horn, but the going down via South Africa, it would cut down on the amount of expense as well. So the idea might be is that we would be witnessing a drop in prices. So hopefully inflation could drop a little bit, or we could have experienced a little bit more security in our supply chains and a little bit more speed in our supply chains, and therefore a drop in price in our supply chain. So it would be a knock-on effect, an echo effect. We would feel reverberations of this policy, but probably not be directly linked to it. So there's that. So that's what I wanted to finish with. Let's take a look at Japan Society 5. Cheaper shit would be nice though. 0.0.
The fourth industrial revolution will enable us to create a new society. Artificial intelligence will transform the big data collected through the Internet of Things into new wisdom. Society 5.0. A technology-based, human-centered society. The fourth industrial revolution will raise our standard of living and solve various challenges we face. It will, for example, free us from the stress of driving, allowing us to safely visit anyone, anytime. We will have access to the latest medical advancements at a low cost, no matter where we are. AI and robots will enhance human ability and expand our infinite possibilities, helping us enjoy more fulfilling lives.
Wow.
Society 5.0.
Nice.
For the betterment of human lives.
Whoa. All right. So that is the Japanese government's Japan Society 5.0 proposition released in 2016, 2017. What if they have a new one? I don't know if they do. Do they have the money to make such a nice promotional song for their ambitions? But I like to use this Society 5.0 as an umbrella term as opposed to just AI, which is whatever you want it to be. And it also indicates that there's a movement by our overlords to push society in a certain direction and push it there hard and edge it there over time. And that's what they're aiming to do. Society 1.0, meaning in the caves. Society 5.0, meaning wireless algorithms, AI everywhere, facial recognition. You can look at a camera and order an Uber, and it will use your voice as authentication and face as a payment. And the Uber will come and it will be self-driving, and then you'll go to wherever you need to go. And your carbon credits will run out eventually, and then the government will send you a big box of bugs to eat, and you'll have to eat those before you can get 35 grams of protein to feed to your son, who isn't qualified for these rights yet. The dystopian nature jumps out of us pretty quickly here. Is that pre-programmed in us all due to the media? Am I just a future boomer? Like the boomers who thought robots would be walking around like Jetsons style, like 1950s sci-fi. I am a robot. But no, they don't. Now boomers think that still, but it's not happening. Maybe the future boomers, me, I'm 45, maybe in 30 years when I'm 75 and I'm talking about my rights, they'll be like, oh, you boomer. You think you have rights. You think you have the right to privacy? What are you, a boomer? I have compiled a list of major things going on in Japan right now. And AI is largely not Japanese. It's largely not Japanese at all. It's imported and then reconfigured to local Japanese markets. And it's resulting in a major outflow of capital from Japan to basically the United States, mostly China too. And then they generate money inside of Japan. But instead of hiring a bunch of Japanese people, it's just automated now. So there's like a cutoff and an extraction going on. This will kind of be evident based on what I'm going to say here. So just had an ad start playing up on a tab I had open. That stuff drives me crazy. But let's take a look at these lists here of local companies collaborating with major international companies to create an effect of a drain and a short-term profit vector. SoftBank and OpenAI collaboration. This has been going on for a while. They promised to invest $500 billion into the United States with Oracle. I used to work at SoftBank from 2015 to 2020, and I'm very familiar with their AI ambitions. That was my job for a while, is to research AI and present it to their vice presidents and their AI engineers, experimental roboticists, and so on. And I learned a lot there during that time, but it's been 5 years now. Anyways, SoftBank, a major Japanese telecom company, has partnered with OpenAI, the US-based creator of ChatGPT, to transform a Farmer Sharp LCD plant in Sakai, Osaka, into a massive AI data center. Interesting, huh? This facility, expected to begin operations in 2026, will be one of Japan's largest, with a power capacity of 150 megawatts. The project, reported on March 14th, involves a roughly 100 billion yen investment by SoftBank to operate AI agents developed with OpenAI. AI agents are, of course, workers that are AI, like a lawyer, a math person. It's somebody that exists in your company, in your company's computer, and you work with them. So this is the idea that you're not bringing up younger people into the company to develop skills. You're just hiring a bunch of AI agents via an American company, and you send them a bunch of money for the privilege to do so. And you save money by not hiring locally. The move aligns with SoftBank's broader ambitions to expand its AI operations in Japan, including its collaboration with OpenAI on an enterprise AI called Crystal Intelligence. With Japan's dropping population, these AI agents might make sense in the long run, too. because you don't want to hire, if like your average AI agent could be like somebody who would score like an average of 80 to 85% on high school testing. If you have like a low amount of people entering the workforce, you might have to resort to people who score 60 to 65%. Might be okay for some industries, but for many industries, you need to have quite a source of rigor for the amount of professionalism you can expect from them. And maybe AI agents, so instead of importing like 30 million people from around the world, you just unleash AI agents into all the company's computers, and you prevent a mass migration event from occurring. I'm against mass migration, so that's good for me. But I'm also worried about the future of people being able to develop skills that would give them some sort of purpose in life. This could be doing that and not doing that, but then again, extracting a whole bunch of capital from Japan while one company makes enough money from it. Do they reinvest that into the youth? I don't know. Next, SAP's AI agent service launch, so more AI agents. On March 17th, Nikkei reported that SAP, Europe's largest software company, plans to introduce an AI agent service in Japan as early as this month. This service aims to assist Japanese businesses with tasks like handling customer complaints, marking SAP as the latest player to bring AI-driven workflow tools to the market. CEO Christian Klein emphasized the initiative's focus on enhancing business processes through AI. So there we go. Another similar thing as the one before, but a foreign company entering Japan to introduce software agents into Japan's companies. Sakana AI's research breakthrough. A Japanese startup, Sakana, made headlines on March 17th when it announced that its AI system, AI Scientist V2, generated 3 scientific research papers that passed peer review. One paper was accepted at the International Conference on Learning Representations 2025 workshop, scoring higher than many human-written submissions. This is what I went on to before. If the population decreases and the average person is not the high enough, does not score enough points to indicate some sort of reasonable capability for hiring them over long term, an AI agent would make more sense. Palantir's defense AI proposal. Now, Palantir is, of course, a Peter Thiel venture. They are defense, and they find loopholes to kill people. On March 17th, Palantir CEO Alex Karp urged Japan and the U.S. to fast-track partnerships on AI-driven defense systems. Speaking to Nikkei, Karp suggested Japan could provide hardware while the U.S. contributes software expertise, emphasizing the strategic importance of AI and national security. This reflects a push for deeper technological collaboration between the new nations. It also puts Japan as the biatch because the software is where all of the thinking is done and where all the innovation is done. And Japan would just provide the hardware for a foreign company to install itself and extract as a replacement for a service. As an aside here, I'm a Canadian, and I studied a lot of film in the history of film. And this is a classic move that America does to surrounding nations. So when Hollywood was becoming really big in the 20s and 30s, Canada was still a hinterland of nothingness. So it was very difficult to develop cultural institutions, maybe not so much in Toronto and Montreal, but towards the Canadian prairies and British Columbia at the time. It was pretty much an empty wasteland. Not a wasteland, just it was waiting for development, but it hadn't got there yet. And it was a resource-based economy, so it wasn't like they had a lot of people doing theater and comedy, and they didn't have a business know-how to develop a movie theater industry into what it had become in the United States. So the United States, business people from Hollywood came to the United States and persuaded Canadian politicians with the following shtick, saying, man, it's really expensive to make all of these movie theaters and then to make the movies and then to sell them and make people go to them. What we will do is Hollywood will build theaters all across Canada. Canada will screen our movies, and you can do this for free. And in return, we will occasionally mention Canada in our movies, and then people will want to go to Canada as tourists to see Canada. So it's basically a free tourism campaign for Canada. And the Canadians went, sounds great. Let's do that. And as a result, back when movies were in their heyday, like we can even say up to the year 2010, less than 1% of all movies screened in Canada were made by Canada. All of the famous actors went to the United States, and there is literally no Canadian film identity unless you go deep into the underbellies of Canadian subculture, which nobody does, except I did for a long time. This is a similar thing that now is repeating itself because it works, where America's going all over the place and saying, hey, all this stuff's quite hard to build. We got it. Why don't you just make the hardware? We'll install the software. And biddity big and tippity boppity do, or whatever they say. Problem solved. Bob's your uncle. Meanwhile, it's a massive extraction system, and it's a way to exert dominance softly and prevent rival systems from growing because now you are in their systems, and it extracts wealth into your institutions, into your frameworks from around the world. So this is also what's happening in Japan right now. AI and elderly care. On March 18th, CNBC highlighted how Sompo Holdings, a major Japanese insurance company, is leveraging AI to address the shortage of nursing care workers amid an aging population. So they're just talking about using sensors. So this one doesn't reflect that. And finally, an AI milestone academically. Earlier this week, on March 11th, Nikkei reported that an AI system achieved a passing level score on the University of Tokyo's math entrance exam, a feat attributed to advancements in reasoning models since September 2024. Professor Noriko Arai from the National Institute of Informatics described the AI's performance as reaching the level of top human candidates. Now, I don't know where this AI program comes from. I couldn't find it. So I don't know if it falls into this overall scheme I'm outlaying here. But these last two are kind of just a little bit minor ones that are going on this week. But the other three definitely support that. And these are major players. OpenAI, SAP, Palantir, all of these things. So, and then the idea that these agents can be implemented into companies where they're operated by foreign nationals, extract resources and prevent development from what would normally become future rivals are now subjugated into a wider umbrella of biatches. Yeah, there's some more going on in the sphere of AI. We'll just go through some of them right now. This one's kind of fun. This one is sensory training robot helps pianists break skill limits. I'm not going to read too much into this. I'm just going to go off the dome, but basically pianists reach plateaus where no matter how much training they do, they can't get better. They can't hit the notes the way they want to, or to gain the skills required to further their careers. So this glove will do that for you. You just put on this glove and the robot moves your fingers in the way that is needed for this piece that you're working on. And I guess until there's a moment where it's moving your fingers the way that you hadn't moved them before and you go, oh, that's how I need to move my fingers. But anyways, it could speed up training. Could also be used for cheating, but it's a robot glove that helps pianists develop their pianism. How about you? Do you want to develop your pianism? Next, this is one just that's involved with an advertising. It's kind of cheeky, I guess you would say, but it's not like end of the world, and it's not the next wave of amazing technology. It's just called a Sakura AI camera. This is by Kirin, called the Hare Kaze, the wind breeze, or the nice day breeze. You just use this website on your phone, and you take a picture of a tree, a cherry tree, which is what everybody does at this time of year, and it shows you how old the tree is. And this is a way to promote conservation, but then there's also a Kirin label on it, I would assume. And then, people like to drink beer under trees, and this just might be a way for Kirin to take advantage of this time of year where people are taking pictures of sakura and do something like that. So it's just like a kitschy advertising thing. And it would be kind of fun to use if somebody took a picture and they were like, hey, I'm using this AI camera and it says this tree is 97 years old. You might go, oh, that's interesting. Well, look, they have beer on there. Let's drink a beer. Moving on. Tohoku University and others unveil a prototype of an AI robot for the lunar surface. It is versatile and can carry out missions autonomously. So this is a big part. We're establishing moon bases if we haven't already. China is certainly working on it on the far side of the moon, where it's always dark and there's never sun there ever, because the sun is always shining on the side of the moon that we see, and that's because the Earth is flat. So this research group has completed a prototype of the modular AI robot Moonbot for ground experiments and conducted a public experiment at the Space Exploration Field at the Japan's Aviation and Aeronautics Agency Sagamihara campus. I think that's JAXA. I can't remember. I'm not going to go too much into it, but you can look at the details there on MatthewPMBigelow.com, the official website of the podcast, where you can get pictures and links and everything. I link everything up there. This next one, though, I think is going to be the main crux for part 2 of Japan Society 5.0. And I've been waiting for this for years. And again, just like with the supply chain wars, I'm like going, is this too fringe to talk about? And this has to do with traffic lights and city lights, all of the light poles and the telephone poles. Those are holding a key factor in the surveillance of us all in the future. It used to be like kind of crazy to think that the traffic lights were following you around, or the telephone poles were monitoring you in real time. If you said that like 15 years ago, you would have to take medication. But now you make money. Multifunction utility poles to support autonomous driving at the Osaka Kansai Expo, supplying information that is difficult to obtain with sensors. So one big fallback for 5G as opposed to 4G. 4G is good at penetrating walls or going through things, and it has good reach, and it's relatively stable for its connectivity. But a lot of 5G is not. And the reason that the telephone poles come into effect is that what you can do is you can put 5G repeater stations on all the telephone poles, and that will repeat the signal coming to it from above to below. And then that way it would spread out the range of signal to people underneath telephone poles or underneath trees or underneath bus stops or something like that. So going at it from massive base stations and just projecting it like as a blanket doesn't really work with a lot of 5G technology. But having all of the telephone poles and all of the infrastructure below a certain height level that would repeat the 5G signal into a fan, like a spread it out as a footprint underneath it, we mean that there would also be overlap between the poles and the bus stops and the telephone booths that are still up for some reason, which is part of this reason that the telecommunications network is key for this. So pretty soon, I would imagine, there will be 5G base stations on most of the still publicly available telephone booths, and those will be part of this sort of last we talk about the last mile delivery, which is a very complex problem for autonomous delivery because everything is just so individualized. The last mile, it's not applicable to robotics at its current level. The same thing with 5G delivery of signal. There's so much variability in the final 20 or 30 meters of height in a complex urban system. Trees, awnings, glass, steel, everything's being reflected. And if the 5G signal is not strong enough to blanket it, well, then you just put repeater stations on everything. And you have like this last 30 feet or last 15 meters of 5G blanketing technology that goes through everything. So the telephone pole systems and all that I was mentioning is a part of like a infrastructure, like hair. It's the 5G hair. And this is the thing that allows the net to sort of cover everything. Moving on. Launch of Forest Survey Digital Transformation Service using drones and AI analysis software. Reduces the workload of forest surveys and contributes greatly to resolving labor shortages in the forestry industry. This is just more drone mapping, which makes sense. Just put drones with cameras and sensors, fly them over areas, see how those areas change. You can also have cameras that monitor heat, cameras that monitor the amount of water in the soil, whatever it is. And then you can just get a more accurate view of the forest over time with a lot less effort and a lot less labor involved. Let's close that. Japan's first facial recognition smart unmanned bookstore, a new challenge in a struggling industry. Just another case of an unmanned store being applied instead of a convenience store. Now it's a bookstore. So after a certain period of time, don't you hate it when you wake up at 2:30 in the morning and you want to go buy a book, but the bookstore is closed? Well, now you just use your face to go in, buy something, and get out. Next, this one, I'm going to skip it. I don't want to talk about that. The facial recognition Frido platform continues to expand in Japan. DXYZ introduces facial recognition platform Frido to Mitsubishi Jisho residences, the Park Habyo Nagoya Matsubara. I've been covering DXYZ for a long time. I would say 99.99999% of Japan has never heard of Frido or DXYZ. But on the podcast, we're kind of getting sick of it. But they have a facial recognition platform, and it's being installed into new condominiums, and people use their face for the front door, the entry gates, and then use their face for the elevator. Takes you up to your floor, then use your face for your door, and that only works for you and a few other registered members. You can also issue one-time codes to people coming to visit you, so now you don't have to wait for them to ring. They just come on in. This has been expanding a lot recently. This property is an all facial recognition apartment building where Frido will be installed in all private areas and is scheduled for completion in February 2025. That might be a typo. This is translated with AI software. And it often makes mistakes with dates between Japanese and English, with occupancy scheduled to begin in mid-March. So I think Frido is used well over 150 places now. And the advantage for Frido is that they're developing a very targeted market segment for the usage of facial recognition applications, because not a lot of people want to use facial recognition, but those that do buy a mansion specifically for that. Now Frido has a bunch of people who want to have this technology expanded for them. And again, this is all being done not so openly. I mean, it's openly if you find it, but you don't really notice it, which is another part of the Japanese style AI revolution that's going on. On one part, a lot of it is imported from abroad, and you pay a service to foreign companies. More of my voice is going, I got to finish this up. But then on the other side, you don't really notice a lot of this technology going in, and the general population has no idea that these companies even exist and are flourishing in the way that they are. So there's a whole bunch of odd dichotomies going on with the rollout of artificial intelligence technologies in Japan at the moment, and we're covering it on the Japan What podcast. So my voice is shot. I got to wrap this thing up. I'm going to play a song based on today's headlines, and we'll come back and finish her off.
Circuits hum and gleam. SoftBank ignites a Titan forged from steel. A data heart's a pulse with open AI stream. Ambition carves its arc through wires appeal. SAP unfurls its agent swift and keen to cradle queries, soothe the client's din. A woven dance of code through tasks unseen. Efficiency crowns the silence they begin. It's not in the future, it's happening now on the Japan What podcast. mind, a scribe of boundless lore, pens truths to pierce the scholar's guarded veil, yet stumbles soft on sight as it can't restore. Discovery bends beneath its crafted tail. Palantir calls for shields in code to blend, while Songo heals with sensors gentle tend. It's not in the future, it's happening now on the Japan Podcast. What podcast? In Kyushu's gaze, where mountains kiss the brine, long-range shaft soar to split the heavens span. A muted oath to hold the fragile line. Resolve ascends through iron stern command. Owaji's fourth emerges sharp and grand, while BYD's flash outpaces time swift tide. Its hull and echo in the sea's demand. Precision threads the depths where threats reside. China's fleet, dual wrought in dockyard swells, as US and Japan melt keels anew. To curve the reach their rivals forge compels. Alliance finds the waves they seek to heal. Seabot plots twist in currents dark and sly. Triumph tilts to who masters sea and sky. On the Japan, what, on the Japan, what podcast?
All right. Thank you for listening. Make sure to go to MatthewPMBigelow.com or make a donation at paypal.me/JapanWUT. That's paypal.me/JapanWUT. Until next time, everybody, I bid thee a very warmful and joyful Ja Mata.